You know those nights that are supposed to be unforgettable? The kind you'll look back on and laugh about with your friends for years? Yeah, my bachelor party was supposed to be one of those. But instead of laughter, all I've got now is a knot in my stomach and a head full of questions I never wanted to ask. It started out normal enough. A few drinks at this trendy downtown bar, music loud enough to make your bones vibrate, and my closest buddies hyping me up like this was some kind of last hurrah. Ryan, my best man, even brought along a guy I didn't know, a coworker named Liam. "You'll like him," Ryan said. "He's your kind of people." And, honestly, he was. Liam had this effortless charm, like he could walk into a room and own it without even trying. We hit it off fast, talking sports, cracking jokes, the usual guy stuff. Somewhere between shots, I pulled out my phone to show him a picture of Hannah, my fiancée. "She's gorgeous, man," Liam said, his voice genuine. But then, there was this flicker in his eyes. It was quick, so quick I almost missed it. But I didn't. "What?" I asked, suddenly uneasy. Liam hesitated, swirling his drink like he was deciding whether or not to spill whatever was on his mind. "I don't know, man. She looks familiar, like I've seen her somewhere before." I tried to laugh it off. "She's not exactly famous," I said. "Maybe you're thinking of someone else." But Liam wasn't laughing. "No, it's her. I'm sure of it. I just can't place where." That should have been the end of it. I should have let it go, chalked it up to a drunken mistake. But instead, I found myself asking, "Where do you think you've seen her?" Liam shrugged, his expression shifting. "It's probably nothing, but you might want to ask her about her time in Europe. Just saying." And just like that, the party was over for me. Oh, I stayed, pretended to have a good time, even took a few more shots. But Liam's words stuck like a splinter in my mind. I couldn't shake them. And then Liam got sloppy. Really sloppy. He pulled me aside after his fifth, or maybe sixth drink, his words slurring so badly I could barely piece them together. But when I did, my stomach dropped. "Mark, listen, man," he said, grabbing my shoulder for balance. "I know her. I know her from Europe." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" He leaned in closer, his breath reeking of whiskey. "She was with a lot of guys, man. Not just dates, like relationships. Messy ones. She's got a past." I pulled away, my pulse pounding in my ears. "What do you mean, messy?" Liam just shook his head. "Bad stuff, drama. Like guys who didn't make it out okay." He looked like he was about to say more, but then he clammed up and stumbled off toward the bathroom, leaving me standing there with my world tilting sideways. By the time I got home, Hannah was already asleep. She looked peaceful, her hair spread across the pillow like something out of a dream. And yet, for the first time since we got back together, I couldn't look at her without feeling a cold weight pressing on my chest. Europe. The one part of her life that always felt hazy. Sure, she told me she was studying for her second degree, but she never went into much detail. I didn't push her on it because, honestly, I didn't care. She was back, we were together, and that's all that mattered. Until now. Liam's words played over and over in my head like a bad song I couldn't turn off. What if there was something she wasn't telling me? What if the Hannah I was about to marry wasn't the woman I thought I knew? I didn't have answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure. My bachelor party had just set fire to the life I thought I had. And the flames were only getting started. The next morning, the hangover hit me like a freight train. But the pounding in my head wasn't just from the alcohol. Liam's words refused to fade, echoing through my skull like they were carved there. I couldn't stop replaying them. Messy relationships, bad stuff. Guys who didn't make it out okay. Hannah was already awake when I stumbled out of bed. She was in the kitchen, humming softly while making coffee, looking so effortlessly perfect that it almost hurt to look at her. I forced a smile. "Morning." "Morning." She beamed, walking over to kiss me. I flinched. It wasn't on purpose, but I felt her pause. She pulled back slightly, her eyes narrowing. "You okay?" I nodded, lying through my teeth. "Yeah, just a rough night." She grinned. "I'm sure Ryan didn't make it easy for you." I tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. Nope, he definitely didn't. For the rest of the morning, I tried to act normal, But every glance, every word felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was suddenly living with a stranger, and when I finally couldn't take it anymore, I asked the question that had been eating me alive. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. "Can we talk about Europe?" Her hand froze mid-stir in her coffee cup. "Europe?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "You don't talk about it much. I just realized I don't actually know a lot about your time there." She blinked, her smile dimming. "I told you everything that matters." The words were so sharp, so final that they cut through me. But before I could push further, she stood up and kissed my cheek. "Let's not dig up the past, okay?" Then she walked away, leaving her untouched coffee behind and me drowning in more questions than ever before. The silence she left behind felt heavier than any argument we could have had. My mind raced with every possible explanation for her reaction. Was it guilt, fear, or just irritation that I'd brought up something she wanted to forget? I couldn't let it go, though, not after Liam's drunken ramblings. If there was something lurking in her past, I had to know. I owed it to myself and to the life we were about to build together. So I decided to dig deeper, quietly. That afternoon, while Hannah was out running errands, I opened her laptop. I'd never snooped before. It felt wrong. But my gut was screaming that something wasn't right, and I couldn't ignore it. Her password was easy to guess, our anniversary. My hands shook as the desktop appeared, clean and ordinary, like she had nothing to hide. At first I found nothing unusual. Photos of us, work documents, the usual clutter. But then I noticed a folder buried deep within another folder, labeled simply, Travel. When I opened it, my heart sank. There were dozens of photos from her time in Europe, none of which I'd ever seen before. Most were harmless. Pictures of landmarks, group shots with friends, dinners at fancy restaurants. But then, the tone shifted. There were images of her with men I didn't recognize, their arms around her, laughing and looking far too close for comfort. One picture stood out. She was sitting on a yacht, leaning into a guy with a slick smile and a Rolex gleaming on his wrist. Something about the way she looked at him made my stomach churn. It wasn't the way she looked at me. I kept scrolling, my chest tightening with every photo. Then I found the emails. They weren't saved in her inbox, but tucked away in the same folder. Most were old, dating back years, but the subjects were clear enough to make my blood run cold. "Miss you. When are you coming back? I can't believe you left me like this," and I opened one at random. It was from someone named Pierre. "Pierre. Hannah, I don't understand how you can walk away like this. After everything we've been through, after everything I've done for you. You said you loved me. Was that a lie too?" The words blurred as my pulse roared in my ears. She'd told me her time in Europe was for studying, but this wasn't studying. This was something else, something I couldn't explain or excuse. When Hannah came home, I shut the laptop and pretended nothing was wrong. But inside, I was unraveling. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't bring myself to touch her. The woman beside me felt like a stranger, a puzzle with missing pieces I wasn't sure I wanted to find. The next day, I made a decision. If Hannah wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. I called Ryan, asked him for Liam's number, and within an hour, I was sitting across from Liam at a dingy coffee shop. He looked worse for wear, clearly hungover, but sober enough to give me the answers I needed. "Europe," I said, skipping the pleasantries. "What did you mean about Hannah and Europe?" He hesitated, his gaze darting to the door like he was considering bolting. But then he sighed and leaned in closer. "Look, man, I didn't want to get involved, but you deserve to know. She wasn't just studying over there, she was kind of a socialite. She ran with this crowd. Rich guys, parties, private jets. It was like a whole different life." "What kind of life?" I pressed, my voice tight. Liam hesitated again before finally saying, "The kind that leaves scars. I don't know all the details, but I know there were guys who got hurt. Not physically, but emotionally. She's got this way of pulling people in, making them feel like they're the only one. And then when she's done, she's gone, just like that." His words hit like a punch to the gut. I thought I knew Hannah, kind, loving, loyal Hannah. But this version of her? This was someone I didn't recognize. "Why didn't you say something earlier?" I asked, my voice shaking. Because it's not my place, Liam said, looking genuinely regretful. And maybe she's changed. People can change, right? I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that whatever she'd done, whoever she'd been, didn't matter anymore. But as I sat there staring at the remnants of my coffee, I couldn't help but wonder, was I marrying the woman I loved, or a stranger with secrets too big to ignore? I left the coffee shop feeling more lost than ever, the weight of Liam's words dragging me down. Hannah's past wasn't just her story anymore. It was a shadow looming over our future, and I wasn't sure if I could outrun it. I couldn't sleep that night. No matter how many times I tried to reason with myself, to convince myself that Liam had exaggerated or that the emails didn't mean what they seemed, I couldn't shake the gnawing sense of betrayal. Hannah was in the shower when I decided I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I needed answers, real ones, not the half-truths and deflections she'd given me so far. When she came out, wrapped in a towel and smiling like everything was fine, I felt my stomach twist. "We need to talk," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Her smile faltered. "About what?" "Europe." Her face changed instantly. The softness vanished, replaced by something colder, something guarded. "I thought we already talked about this." "No," I said firmly. "We didn't. You brushed it off and changed the subject. But I need the truth, Hannah. I saw the pictures, the emails. I know about Pierre." Her eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. "You went through my stuff?" "Don't turn this around on me," I snapped. "I wouldn't have had to look if you hadn't been hiding things." She crossed her arms, the towel slipping slightly, but she didn't seem to care. "And what exactly do you think you found?" "Enough to know you weren't just studying. Enough to know you had relationships. Messy ones." Her expression cracked, and for the first time I saw something other than anger. Fear. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands trembling as she tried to gather herself. "Fine," she said softly. "You want the truth? Here it is." I braced myself. I wasn't studying in Europe. Not the way I told you anyway. I was lost. After my first degree, I didn't know what I wanted, and I fell into this world of parties and money. And yes, men. But it wasn't what you think. I stared at her. "What am I supposed to think, Hannah?" She wiped at her eyes, smudging her mascara. "I made mistakes. Big ones. I got caught up in that life, in the attention. But I wasn't happy. That's why I came back, to start over, to be better." Her words hung in the air, but they didn't ease the knot in my chest. "And the emails? Pierre?" She shook her head. "Pierre was complicated. He wanted more than I did. When I left, he didn't take it well. He sent messages for months trying to get me to come back, but I didn't. I walked away from all of it." Her voice cracked, and I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the doubts wouldn't stop gnawing at me. I couldn't let it go. The next day, while Hannah was out, I searched her phone and found a number saved under an alias. I recognized the man from the yacht photo immediately. My fingers hovered over the screen before I finally pressed call. He answered on the third ring. "Hello?" I hesitated. "Is this Pierre?" There was silence before he said, "Who is this?" "Mark, I'm Hannah's fiancé. I need to know, are you two still in contact? Are you still together?" Another pause. Then he sighed. "No, we're not together. She left me years ago. No explanation. But our daughter still asks about her. She misses her mother very much." His words hit like a punch to the gut. "Your daughter?" "Yes," Pierre said, his voice quieter now. "She was 2 when Hannah left. She barely remembers her now, but she still asks. I thought maybe she'd come back someday. Guess I was wrong." I ended the call without saying goodbye, my hands trembling as I set the phone down. Hannah had a daughter, a child she never told me about. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about her shattered into pieces I wasn't sure I could ever put back together. When Hannah came home, I shut the laptop and pretended nothing was wrong, but inside, I was unraveling. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't bring myself to touch her. The woman beside me felt like a stranger, a puzzle with missing pieces I wasn't sure I wanted to find. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur. I went through the motions, but my mind was set. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She had lied to me, betrayed me, and walked away from her own child. She deserved to be exposed. When the ceremony began, I stood at the altar, heart pounding, watching her walk down the aisle. She looked radiant, but all I could see was the deception underneath. The guests smiled, oblivious to what was coming. When it was time for the vows, I took the microphone. Hannah's eyes sparkled with excitement, but my voice cut through the room like a knife. "I can't do this," I said, stepping back. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and Hannah's smile fell. "What?" she whispered. I looked straight at her. "You're a liar, a manipulator, and a whore." The words were venomous, and I didn't stop. "And while you're here pretending to be the perfect bride, your daughter is waiting for you, waiting for her mother to come back." Hannah's face crumbled as the crowd erupted in whispers and shock. Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't care. I dropped the microphone and walked out of the church, leaving her standing there in disgrace. As I stepped outside, the weight on my chest finally lifted. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing. I was free.